Sorry, you could get your food. I'm Marilyn Tubbs, and I am the lead for the Encore Ministry or Senior Ministry here at Prince of Peace and that part of the implementation team. I had one sheet that was given to you, and one of the reasons I did that is for a couple to kind of set the stage for the beginnings of us. And first of all, as we started meeting, we decided, how about if we compare our senior ministry to family ministry? And if you look at that, it's really quite unique. If we take people 85 years and up, we can compare them to preschool. The needs are kind of the same. They need a lot of that stuff. If they're 70 to 84, there's some health issues. They need more guidance and they need empowerment. If they're middle school, they're 60 to 70. And they're starting to consider that they may retire and what that means. And they're thinking on planning on what that means in their lives. What will I do? What do I want to do? If they're senior high age, which is Jeffrey, Marion, and those people in their 50s, most of that population doesn't even want to talk to us. You know, they say, don't include me in the senior ministry. Oh, okay. Don't include me. So, but they're independent and they're on their own. They're trying to figure out, how will I retire? Do I have enough money and all of those things? They're on their own track, and they're not really, we have found as we've been interviewing some of the people in our congregation, it's sort of like, I love you dearly, Marilyn, and I'm not in your league. So this compares very much like our family ministry as to the needs and what they're able to do. When we talk about hope and wholeness for the Encore population, both within our church and south of the river, we talk about a need to be respectful, to meet them where they are, to listen, to hear what their stories are, to honor their choices. And one of the things about aging, the older you get, the harder it is for you to tell people you need them. I can no longer do. And I speak from somebody who lives with a debilitating disease that it's happened very early in my life. And it's not easy even to be 72 and to have my limitations. So we deal with that. We're here to help you. But in order to help you, we're talking about relationships that Mike talked about. I have to know how much you care about me before I care about how much you know. And that the church cares about you. Well, we certainly find that. Jeff and I have talked about that a lot with our older population here at Prince of Peace. They need the most coddling to believe that we'll move forward and it's the best for everybody, including them, because they have the past. And the past felt secure, not necessarily all good, but it felt secure. Then I want to give you some statistics, because I don't know if all of you are aware of them. 32% of the Prince of Peace population is over 60. That's 1,486 people are over 60 here at Prince of Peace. 9.9% of Dakota County is over 65 years old. In 15 years, 20% of the population will be over 65 years old. That's a 200% increase from today. Almost 30% of that population will be living alone. So, I mean, we're talking about huge numbers that are reaching something we haven't even created yet. So with that being in mind and comparing us to the family ministry, because that sounds better to most of us aging. It feels like we're naturally going to somewhere good, right? Instead of going to somewhere that no one wants to be. So as a group, we decided we would identify the key areas. And what we find as we've interviewed Ebenezer, as we've interviewed other nursing homes and other places that take care of seniors, what they say is there are more and more people in the future who will try to remain in their homes because it's quite untrue that they can afford to go anywhere else. Now those people, some of them will have families who will be around them that can help them wait it out and take care of them or provide for them, but a huge majority will exist in a household where it's just them, and believe me, they're just existing. So transportation, we decided, is a huge thing. And it's a huge thing all the way through. I think in every one of our committees, it's a huge thing. For medical appointments, for groceries, for the fact that people will have to give up the ability to drive. Now, someone said to me the other day, I'm not ever going to lose the ability to drive. And my response was, no, but your kids will take the keys away. The truth of the matter is, whether it's willingly or not willing, at some time, most of us will have to give up driving, and we will need to depend on somebody to help us at that point. That's really tough when you've been independent. When you've been able to do all of it, it's like, I don't want anyone to help me. I want my car back. And if you're even at the Regents, I go over there twice a week, and every time I'm over there, I hear someone say, if I could just still drive, because that seems like the answer to everything. So we identified the challenges. Legislation passed in 1965 created a very large number of agencies that provided services to the older population. The second thing we saw is that isolation and quality of life needs being taken care of were going to be huge. Over 10,000 agencies were created in Minnesota receiving funding from that next 1965 legislation. Access to these services is not easy. And it's interesting, we've had several people try to access these sites and get help. It is a nightmare. It is a nightmare. One of the people called to get a ride for a specific purpose in Burnsville. They listed on the website 131 places you could call. We ended up with one place that could help us. One out of 131. So imagine what a massive job that is, to figure out how you get there, how you fit. For many of these opportunities to get rides or to get help, most of them involve you being also in other government programs. So the first question is, are you in this program? Push this button. If you're not, go back to square one. So it's an enormous responsibility and bewilderment to the senior population to figure that out. There are many family members who try from far away to take care of them, but that's not easy. And often what they hear from mom and dad is, I am fine, and they aren't fine. So people, again, that acknowledging that we're growing older and that we're going to need help, and addressing that attitude of aging, so that whether we're 50 or 72 or 85, we see that as society saying to us, you have helped us much in the past, and we are here for you. What can we do for you? Is going to be huge from the mental and compassionate standpoint of Encore Ministry. So we tried to identify what would be our partners if we wanted to do quality of life needs and transportation, and we wanted to try to change attitudes about aging. Where would we go? So we got a hold of DARTS. DARTS came to us, and we spent 2 meetings with them telling us about a wonderful new driving program that was going to be available under their new reorganization, and it seemed like we would be a great fit for it. We no sooner got to planning on that, and we ran into the Uber law. So now DARTS is on hold with all transportation because there will be legislation, and it will take a whole year to process it, saying who knows who's covered by what insurance if you're driving. And that affects us. It affects DARTS. It affects anybody we could partner with. So all of a sudden, we've got all of these places we thought fit that didn't fit. And what we are finding with the senior population, as we seek to serve them, we are definitely governed by legislation and laws. We can't just by the goodness of our heart jump in the car and go do it. So we called agencies, and we thought DARTS has a paid housekeeping situation. In other words, I can call and say, I need someone to come and help me clean my house, and they want to know if I'm involved in any other government program, what's my income, and they need to know all those statistics. And then on a sliding scale, I am charged. So we said to them, how about if we partnered with you and we took people who could afford nothing? And they said, it's a great idea, Marilyn, but here's the problem. We can't send people in-house to do things for our people because we use paid staff. And we said, well, is that always necessary? What happens is most of these organizations, their paid staff is people who have been on government subsidies and welfare, and they've been moved to these low-paying jobs to get them off of them. So we can't take your Prince of Peace volunteers with the goodness of their heart and replace one of them with yours. The other thing we ran into is, the other reason we can't do that is you cannot train at Prince of Peace, send them to DARTS, and they can go into DARTS homes under our umbrella and not have our training, our background search. So all of a sudden, all of these places where we're thinking, well, this is going well, we met up with it going well, except that you can't do that. We can't allow you to fill those positions. We have to leave those people in it. Now, both darts and CAP have said to us what we could do is you can be outside. In other words, we could call Prince of Peace and you could arrange a group of teenagers to come and rake somebody's yard for the fall. They still would have to go through us because we would have to be able to say that we interviewed them or whatever. And for some of these organizations, the training's quite lengthy. So can we and will we be able to ask our Prince of Peace people, would you go through 20 hours of training at darts, a background check, and from Prince of Peace? And the people we've interviewed and asked that, you want to know their answer from Prince of Peace? No, I wouldn't. I want to volunteer from Prince of Peace. So as we looked at that, we said, okay, what would happen if we looked at that? And there is a quite extensive, through a church in the South, there's quite an extensive setup of a caring ministry. Much bigger than our lay ministry situation, but set up so that people are trained by us, background checked by us and our Prince of Peace volunteers, and then they would go out under our umbrella, okay? It means that we could possibly resource with darts and they could use us in situations if they had a need that we could fill because we had an organization. If we do that, it's suggested that we would not only have it here, but we would join together with other churches, so that a caring ministry could exist, Shepherd of the Valley, Berean, the Catholic Church, or wherever it might be, with a body governing it that would come together so that we could be on the same page and be using the same resources. That would certainly take resources here and far more money here than we've got, but it opens the door for us to clear some of the hurdles that are out there for us right now. Right now we feel like we have a lot of great ideas. One of the last ideas we have that felt really if when we're talking about relationships, we thought Prince of Peace needs a huge coffee room where the coffee pot's always on and the knowledge is always there to collaborate with everybody in our south of the river where you might like to be served by or serve with. We try to do that with the seniors to some degree. It's not altogether successful. And if you ask our seniors, even they're still looking for trips that are prepared by us because we haven't updated with, you just go to the senior center. They have wonderful trips. You can go online, you can see what's available. So much needs to be done informationally, and so much needs to be done in preparing people to know how they get help. Not only in our congregation, but as we move out further into the community. I wish I could say we know who we're going to partner with. And we certainly have darts and CAP, and we've talked to people who have incredible programs if we use them and represent them. If we use our volunteers to send to them and they use our volunteers. Whether that would be successful at Prince of Peace, I can't tell you. From the surveys we've taken with different seniors, it doesn't sound that way. But again, we have some mellowing to do with our seniors, some caregiving to do with our seniors, with the Marilyn and Norm Tubbses of our congregation, to have them believe that they are part of the future. And this is how they can be a part. So, one of our suggestions to making all this happen, and it's come up a couple of times in our meetings, is that there would be a full-time professional volunteer manager here at Prince of Peace who would have a database of all the people's ability to volunteer in every capacity. So that if you have a Marilyn Tubbs, I could be interviewed and I would say, I'm a lay minister, I love to do that, but I would love to help with kids on Wednesday night if I could. So that person would stay not only in touch with the database that would cover our entire congregation in every area of our vision, but also perhaps could be the person who could initiate this. If we chose to start a care ministry, that could be the beginning of that position, to get that started and to start it within and move us out of our walls to care for others. And that person then would be the person who would not only know the database of everybody in our church that can volunteer and how they would be used best, but also where they can be used. What are the availabilities? Who needs us? What are the restrictions? Which is another thing that's limiting to all of us. I I think there's great excitement in our committee as we look at the future for Prince of Peace and our aging population. I think we were also surprised by the limitations by laws and regulations and organizations that we thought we'd just move in and work with them. And it's just not possible. So if I were going to give you a presentation tonight asking where I think we'd like us to move, it would be a coffee shop where there is the opportunity not only for relationships and getting to know one another, but a place to get a hold of information. And a person, our suggestion would be that volunteer managed situation who knows all about us, what's available to do, and whether you're qualified to do it. It's interesting, every now and then I come across somebody who says the reason we don't use older people is they generally don't work out. Now, I don't know how that makes you feel because you're mostly younger than me, but quite truthfully at 72, there must be a place for me. So we need to be able to say, you know, Marilyn, I don't think you're a perfect fit with the nursery school kids because you can't get down on the floor. That could be an issue. But boy, could we ever use you in middle school ministry. Or if it's someone who wouldn't be appropriate in middle school ministry, we need to be able to plug them in somewhere else. So it doesn't seem like we're not needed because of age. Perhaps we're just asking to be in the wrong place. So I guess that would be our suggestions. If I were going to say to you tonight, I would say we're still talking to DARTS. We're still talking to CAP. We're still trying to figure out how would any of that work. But the biggest area where we think it would work the best is if we went under the a caregiving ministry initiated with other churches taking care of on a free basis the most vulnerable seniors south of the river. And that's the only way we are going to be able to do it without waiting and jumping through more hoops and right. It's in Kentucky, I believe. And they've written a program very much like we have our lay ministry. Here's who you have to do it. Here's how it has to work. Here's how it's accountable. It's very well written. But it does involve our involvement, certainly with someone to head it, certainly lay people who are trained to assist that person, almost like Jeff said, almost like a board to make that happen. And but done well, it also feels like it's something that allows us to reach all the people we want to without them having to always see, do you belong to this? Are you on this subsidy? Do you belong to this? What's your income? We have a little more control on that than we're ever going to have with any of the agencies we've talked to.
So the care ministry is about resource management, or
Well, it would actually be, certainly it would be, resource ministry would be part of it. In other words, we would be able to better equip people with where they can get help and how they do that. How to make it not seem so overwhelming to even begin to approach it. But beyond that, we could create a ministry where as a lay minister, I go out on hospital calls and I'm one-on-one with people. I attend with people when they're dying. That training would be so that you would be able to go into somebody's home and help them with housework. You would be able to take them grocery shopping, and you would have the training to know what that involves, things to look for, whatever, so that we've done your background check, we've trained you properly to go, and we have you covered against, because that's the big thing. When you enter people's home, that liability and insurance thing is a huge question.
The transportation piece, I was on that, and one of the email trails. I did not realize that it would be in limbo for a year. Is that indeed the case, or did I just miss that?
Well, if you talk to one of the legislatures, and we have, they say, oh, it won't take that long. And if you talk to someone who's dealt with the legislatures, they say, good luck with the year. So I have no idea, quite truthfully. Yeah. So I really don't know. I mean, they say it'll be at least a year, and the people who've worked with them say good luck. And they're really nervous about that's a huge thing, this Uber thing. I mean, they don't even know what that means for a whole lot of areas, let alone, people driving buses and in their cars and that kind of stuff. So that's really on at a standstill till that gets figured out.
I know a few years, well, maybe 5-10 years ago here, they wouldn't even coordinate carpools because of the liability.
Right. Well, and if you go back, even in our history of Prince of Peace, look at the years we didn't worry about it. I picked up Myrtle, and Myrtle was fine. Now we're 30 years later, and it's like, don't you dare go get Myrtle unless we know our bases are covered. So just like everything else in our vision, times have changed drastically. From the time with just good intentions we could go do it, to now when we want to go do it, but we're prepared and equipped and secure in doing it. And it's a good thing, too, because it protects the people whose homes we're going into. So I don't want to make it sound negative. It's very good, but it changed the game drastically. And the vulnerable adults that we want to reach, that's going to take relationships. You know, I was with somebody today who would like me to visit her mother, and her mother saying, I don't want to meet this woman. Oh, but you love Marilyn Tubbs. I don't want to meet Marilyn Tubbs. You know, the truth of the matter is, we, even as children of our parents, we have great ideas of what's best for Mom. But it takes a while to say, Mom, she just wants to come over and talk to you. I don't know if I'll ever meet her. Because I have said I'm not coming to meet her till she asks for me. I'm not going to go knock on her door and say, your daughter sent me. Because I've had that happen before. And they said, really? Well, go see my daughter. So there's a lot of dynamics that have changed so much. So. It's not, you know, I think all of us who've been on the team, and Jean's on our team, and Carrie's joined us, it's not that I want to make this seem dismal, because it isn't. But when we look at the numbers that are in this population, it may well be important that we make it that important, that we set up our own caring ministry with the tools and the training and the equipped people to take care of it. Okay.
You can come see us anytime.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I hope my daughter says
Thank you very
much.
Chris, since this is being taped, is it important I'm up there speaking? Yes.
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 We've gone a little over on the others, so you got a minute and a half.
Good luck.
Actually,
Legislature, good luck.
I can. A 1, 2, 3, 4. I can make this fairly short because a lot of the work that we did dovetailed with a lot of the work that the other two committees have done, and they sort of reference some crossover. So philosophically, I could spend 5 minutes talking about the background, the research that we did, but it really ties in perfectly with what Encore and the Children's Committee did. We chatted with lots of people, we got lots of recommendations, we found lots of problem areas, and then we started to investigate. I think it might be helpful just briefly to comment on 3 areas that we chose not to pursue, at least temporarily. So more longer-term possibilities include things like homelessness, childcare, and healthcare. Homelessness, we had some good traction on. We interviewed several different organizations, including a promising one called Beacon Interfaith, and they've done some partnering with South of the River Church, Shepherd of the Lake, in Prior Lake. But we ended up, after meeting with Rebecca Browers, who is one of the coordinators of the Heading Home Dakota County project, she said what's really necessary, it's not that there isn't a need for beds, there certainly is, and I think Cochran's, we just got an email that the Cochrane, I think, men's shelter in Hastings had just now, is closing. So though there is a need, she said the biggest need that we have is to get a hold of landlords and for low-income housing. We simply need, there are simply not enough apartments and places to live for people who need to live. It's difficult for us to envision exactly how, in an easy way, our church community can play into that particular need. We threw around, and what's quite energizing for several of us on the committee, this idea, take for example, if the live-in suites were to go under, wouldn't it be awesome? Live-in suites already has, or someplace similar, they've already got hundreds of beds, sinks, toilets, kitchens, living spaces. They've got the setup right there. What if we were to partner with a bunch of other churches, a dozen plus south of the river, buy the building, buy live-in suites or something similar, and convert it, and we each take responsibility for a few rooms or a floor or a wing. Our minds began to spin. Of course, that's not a good first baby step. But down the road, that kind of idea is pretty exciting and energizing. Much more energizing than trying to figure out how do we convert space here for some emergency shelter. with all the things that might entail. So we said not now for homelessness, but maybe in the future. Childcare, a lot of research. Nancy Suzuki was especially helpful with this research, and she found that in general, difficult starting up lots of things in terms of liability. It's just a big, hairy task. Most helpful might be helping people navigate the childcare that is already available. She said it's like a 20, 30-page forms to get childcare. There's a number of ways that people can participate in childcare and get childcare if they simply had the training, knew about it, could navigate the existing resources. So that might be something we look at speaking into. But in terms of starting up a childcare place from the ground up is probably not the best fit for us at this point. Healthcare. Most of the experts we talked to had said, there actually is a lot of healthcare available. The issue is not that it's available, it's that the people don't know about it, don't know how to access it. Again, getting back to the point that both groups made earlier in terms of navigating the system and how we might be able to speak into that. Just at our last meeting, as we were on the way out, Eric had indicated that he had a nice conversation with one of, and I forget the specifics, maybe you might know, Diane. I don't know. There was a clinic that was just needing to shut its doors. They no longer had the space. They were looking for space to house the healthcare clinic. That was down here. Just as we were beginning to kind of close the door and say what we most need to do is just help people navigate what already exists, this kind of came to our attention, and Eric and the folks will be looking at whether or not it makes sense. Think our dental care unit downstairs, think that in terms of healthcare. People would come here for some basic kinds of things, just like they can come here for basic kinds of dental care. But in terms of creating a health institution or facility from scratch, probably not the best use of our resources at the present time. So we sort of said temporarily, maybe not the best baby steps, maybe down the road for those three issues. What we were especially fired up about are the following two. Transportation, which Marilyn hit on. We were actually in those meetings together with DARTS. We were thrilled. We were all jazzed up. I even had a draft proposal for this board to take a look at. And then we got the email from DARTS saying everything is on hold. Like, oh, no. So you've heard the energy surrounding the need for transportation in the other committees as well. Hopefully something will fall into place. That would be a very helpful thing. So no need to speak more about transportation. The other main area that we landed on, we termed sort of loosely life skills. And you can think of that as enhancing and dovetailing on things that the Mission Outpost does and already does well. Things like, and one of the agencies that might help us do that is the Reaching Up that we already talked about with Gia Brown. There's another, Pathways to Hope, Salvation Army, and of course we partner with them already. I think I pulled this up here on the website. Pathways to Hope is similar in that it offers, here's just some categories: job training, childcare, education opportunities, housing assistance, legal services. So you kind of get the idea. We want to help people navigate the system and improve their situation and make them more employable and help them get the kinds of resources that they need. So there's a number of ways of doing that. We looked at the Reaching Up as a possibility. I have not sat in on those meetings, so I don't have anything to add to that particular conversation. But I think we'd like to, instead of starting something from scratch, obviously partnering with somebody and dovetailing what Mission Outpost already does well. I think that's really all I have to comment on. Diane, can you think of anything else, that big areas that I missed or that would be helpful for me to mention?
There's a lot of really good interviewers, like you guys too, right? It's just sort of now trying to get, maybe hit some roadblocks a little further.
Questions, anybody? Stunned silence. Yes.
Thanks, Tom. Land and building, quick update there. I know it's not on the agenda, but it's all really important here, so.
Since I'm not on the agenda, I probably should be brief, since Greg Lamond is supposed to talk in about 8 minutes. My name's Bernie Dusich. I've been a member here at Prince of Peace for about 20 years, and on our committee is Kurt A. Strike, Jane Victory, Matt Johnson, Jim Sheldon, and Tim Graff. And we're dealing with more, I guess, mundane things like bricks and mortar and what's this campus going to look like? What do we want it to look like? What's it feasible to look like, etc. So we start with the premise that if we take it out as far as we could in terms of what's the most extensive thing building-wise that would happen, and we built something brand new, probably takes us out to a move-in date of around December of 2018. And then we back off from there all the different things that have to happen. Design, architectural drawings, capital campaigns, etc. So we started with the premise like that. We've met with staff, we've met with various subcommittees. We went into sort of a dream what you'd like to have, okay? Don't be limited by what we've got. Just sort of tell us what you'd like to have. And so we've done that, and we're going to do that further and refine some things. Within the framework of the vision, we're sort of gravitating to some goals or a target of, we have 2 buildings. We have about 100,000 square feet, Kurt, give or take. We have aging buildings, 40 years old, give or take. Significant maintenance is going to be required on these buildings. We've been doing a Band-Aid approach, I think, for the last few years, and envision continuing that until we get what we think is the objective we want to accomplish. So some things that we're thinking about in terms of goals and targets. 1 building as opposed to 2. A worship center that is on grade level for ease of access and negotiability. Probably 20% less space than what we have combined. A worship center that may seat under 900. The reason for that bright line is that I think UL requirements come into play, and Kurt can expand on that if I miss that or misstate it, and it's significantly more expensive. And then if we just look at what we've got in our services, we have 1 service at present that is maybe pushing 900. And when we get beyond that, it's not that many times a year. We can still have something for overflow for those situations. Issues that come into play in terms of thinking about 20% less. What do we do here? What do we have to do here? What can we do in combination with others elsewhere? These are things that, you know, you folks are going to have to wrestle with ultimately. And then the other thing we're looking at is what are the partnership opportunities here in terms of if we put together a new facility with Ebenezer, with the Y, with the Ridges, and what's their interest in our land. By the way, we have 22 acres of land, so we've got a huge asset. And how do we manage that? How do we leverage that? How do we utilize that will work to our advantage, while at the same time serving what the bigger ministry perspective might be, and making it more attractive for us from a cost standpoint to put up a new building. I mean, ideally, it would be a zero-sum game, right? We lease, sell, do something so that when we put up a new structure, it's paid for. And we've been working on, to the congregation's credit, knocking down the debt significantly in, you know, one of the worst recessionary times in history since the 1930s. So those are things to consider. And in terms of revenue streams that we have, we've got parishioners' contributions. We have a parking lot that we lease that brings in a nice revenue source, and maybe there's others, but I think those are the 2 chief ones. All right, so what does that bring us to? And, you know, we're still formulating what the options are, and we'll have a recommendation to the board come December. But just in terms of the realm of possibility, selling what we have and building somewhere else. And initially I thought, well, that doesn't make sense, and it probably may not make sense. But if you've got 22 acres of land and you've got buildings, and I don't know what a square foot price is, but I calculated it's about a million square feet. And you can do the arithmetic. If the numbers start to come into play, that might be meaningful. Something to think about. Do what we have, or make do with what we have, which means we'd have to do the upkeep on the worship center building. This building might be the least costly, but in the big picture might be also the least efficient. And it still leaves us with 2 buildings and the other things that are involved in that, which you all know well. Another option is to sell the worship center building and consider constructing a worship center here in front of or nearby, connected to this building, because we sort of have office type spaces here. The building is limited here with regard to, I think, the beam construction and other aspects of it. But the contra to that is, well, there's a partner across the street that might be interested in this, and this might be a much better asset to sell than the worship building, and, you know, the old triangle. But that's an option. Another option is we sell, lease / rent this building, and we put an addition on that building, either on the northeast or on the due west. We could put a worship center there. Again, these are things that we're thinking about. And they have to all be considered in the context of what will the ultimate square footage needs and uses be that will work best from all our different inputs from everybody, staff and others. What kind of valuations do we have? And we're working on that in terms of the land, in terms of the buildings. What's the cost going to be of new construction? How can we afford it? What's the debt load going to be that we're going to have to incur to make that happen? And how does that translate into what's the ministry that we want to do? And again, are we then back to, well, our ministry's being put on hold or maybe compromised to some degree because the money that we take in is being used to pay for the new facility? Another thought, by the way, with regard to the worship center is perhaps the existing worship center, if we add on to it and do some reconfiguration, could be some sort of a big hall / gymnasium, etc. And there's other things we can be doing. So we're doing our own free association, if you will, and brainstorming on these things. And the end result is that, you know, as we hone in on what the space needs are going to be, assuming that some of our targets are going to be acceptable to folks, like a 20% reduction in total and a 1 building scenario versus 2, and what are the partnership possibilities that hopefully by the time we get to December, we'll have a recommendation for you. We'll have, you know, options more detailed, but we'll have a recommendation for you as to what we think is the best option. And in considering, you know, talking to a state demographer, Marilyn talked about the older folks becoming a larger percentage of the county, larger percentage of Prince of Peace. They also tend to probably be a larger percentage of funding. So, hate to talk about it in those terms, but, you know, that's reality. You've put your kids through school, you've done what you can in your work life, and you're retired, and hopefully a lot of folks are, you know, in a fairly good place. So that's kind of where we're at this point.
So Bernie, when we talk to people, our groups talk to people at their team,
Mm-hmm.
if some of our ideas, such as this large coffee area, whatever, was not mentioned when you were with our team, do we need to update that, or is that necessary, or are we just moving towards December and after that?
Well, we're gonna be circling back with folks again, but the coffee shop, when we met with staff, I think that was probably something that came out of 2 or 3 different areas. So it's something that we've all heard several times. So I think we're well aware of that.
Kind of these gathering spaces, you know,
Right.
you could have places where you can have small conversations and larger conversations.
Yeah.
So that question, we actually talked about it in the finance meeting last week, but, you know, I think we're heading in the right direction, with that. But I think, for me, I think it'd be nice to have, what costs are we avoiding? So what capital costs are we gonna avoid if we did this? And also, what are the operating costs gonna be lower? So, in some ways, I hate to use the word sell, but kind of, how do we support that decision to the congregation?
Well,
I'm not questioning what you come up with, but how do we support it?
well, I think if we do our analysis and our homework correctly, we will provide the information to you and to others who will be looking at it so that they'll come to the conclusion that it seems to be the right conclusion.
Right.
Taking into account all those things. I mean, we're mindful of that, which is why, we wanted someone like Kurt in our group, because he knows these buildings, he knows how they work and how they don't work, and what it's gonna cost to get them to work in the future.
If we do nothing, just continue to operate these two buildings, obviously, we got significant costs operating and.
Right.
And being able to
I mean,
explain what that is.
It's good, well, that, there is gonna be an additional cost, but we're also gaining safer and safe for, and all these other things that come with it. So those are all part of the equation. But I think knowing, if we do nothing, we still have these huge expenditures
Exactly.
and things that don't meet our needs for the future.
Right. No, we would hope, we would plan to spell that out so that when you take into account all the different aspects of things, you'll hopefully come to a conclusion that, proposal A, B, or C is the best option for a number of reasons that make sense to you and would make sense to your constituents.
Great.
Thank you very much.
I was just gonna mention one thing on top of just some of the other reports with our CDLC, which is, hasn't, got its own committee at this time for implementation, but we are continuing to have conversations on it. So we're looking at, working with Marie, and she and I will be meeting again during the fall, and also with Jason, with what is the long-term for CDLC, how does that fit into family ministry, what kind of space needs we need in that, so that's also part of the equation, just so you know that there's an ad hoc group that's still continuing to have that conversation. This is staff, that is staff level at this time.
Oh, that's perfect.
Okay.
Good, thank you. Now everybody kind of heard these, any other questions for the other groups that went earlier while they're here? Anybody?
Jane, just a question on, do we have a range of market value per acre? I know it would be all over the board, but just as we think about if we divest of some acres.
We do, we had gotten an opinion, we had a broker's opinion rather than a full assessment of what we have here, an appraisal, I mean. And the numbers came in very, very high, much higher than I would have thought they'd be. We've got that, we also have a bank appraisal, so we've got somewhere in between. The bank is extremely conservative, this was, an opinion, and it was very generous, and so somewhere in between is where our values are. This building is far more valuable than the other because it has more uses, it would be difficult to sell it. The other building, unless it's to another church or somebody who needs that kind of wide open space configuration. The land itself is very valuable simply because there's 23 acres here, and it's the largest parcel, that there's 14 acres that's still available on campus that's not built on. And so that becomes more valuable as you see continued building in this area. So, what we'd like to do is get, a firm appraisal just to see what things are worth. And then you have an idea, and then we have to factor in what else would need to be done. If, for instance, you want to lease it, we know we need roof work, we know we need HVAC work, and that type of thing, the building will continue to be used at least. So there's a lot of, I'd like to have a broker look at what a lease value is as well.
With the restrictions that we have.
And we have restrictions on the campus that it has to be nonprofit and third list right of first refusal, the hospital, the urban development does, as well as, approval as to what would go in this space. And so even though it would be nonprofit, they certainly aren't gonna want a mail clinic in this spot. So that would be approved, but we have to be careful where that goes.
How soon
this gives us an idea of what's there. And we need a little bit of time between now and September, to formulate that and put out the parameters of that. It would be my.
And you get the specifics to us.
Yeah, and here's that we're looking for, 300-page report, things like that.
Indexed.
Yeah. Multiple languages. Yeah, I hopefully by